Do it. I hear Jesse from New Jersey, Kelsey from Waco, Texas, Ayn from Ireland, Emma from the UK, Ashley, Minneapolis, Maddie from Ohio, Catriona from the UK, Karina from Colorado, Elizabeth from Louisiana, Julie from California, Hetty from the UK, Violet, Ella, Naima from Tennessee, Heather in Wyoming, Marcella from Argentina, doesn't have kids yet. Okay, great. Josephine from Sweden, Steph from Virginia, and Jonna from Southern California. So today we are going to be talking about picky eating. And as you are joining, you're welcome to put your name in the chat and where you're from. And then as we go along, I'll also prompt you to a few more things in the chat. And just generally during these classes, I don't look at the chat as much, but I will pause during the teaching and kind of see where we are. And definitely I want to answer all of your questions on the call today. So I am Kate, if you don't know me. I'm Wild Nutritionist. Maybe this is your first time live with me. Maybe you've been live with me many times and you've taken my courses. Either way, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. So this is an exciting moment for me because it's my first time teaching live since I've had my second baby, and she's right next to me. She's so sweet and so healthy and so good, and we're both doing really, really well. I really give a damn about the postpartum period, and I really take it seriously. So I actually hired someone to work my Instagram for me, so I didn't have to open the app at all, and I didn't do that for 2 months, which was really amazing. And I didn't leave my house for 7 weeks. And that was really, really good, an improvement from my first postpartum. So every baby I have, I'll try to have a little bit more of a luxurious postpartum. And what I really gained from this period, and it's still not really over yet, so I hesitate to speak about all the gems that have been harvested, but something that has struck me so profoundly from this time is that because I gave my system a chance, I let my nervous system really rest, and I gave myself so much time to bond with my baby, that when I did re-enter the world, I wasn't overwhelmed at all. Like, I was so able to just be at the grocery store or go to a restaurant and not feel any sorts of stress or over sensory, like I need to go home right now. That happened with my first baby. I had to like tell my husband several times, like, we have 15 seconds to get out of here before I explode. And the postpartum is really a time for our bodies to reset. We can really set ourselves up for healing. So I know this isn't a postpartum call, but I'm just setting the stage for you all because that's the context that I'm coming from. I'm coming out of a really beautiful rest period. My family just finished a 4-week trip. Alex, this thing is a little bit sketch. Okay, just 1 second. Our camera just fell down. So sorry about that. Technical difficulty. So my family is just coming off of a 4-week trip, which was actually extremely restorative to me. Everyone was like, oh, it must be really hard and stressful and travel with kids. And I can honestly say, because we stuck to our food values and because I really took the time during my postpartum to nourish myself, it was not stressful at all. Like, yeah, we had moments where we had to, prioritize ourselves and keep, hold our boundaries. But other than that, it was extremely restorative and restful. And so all of this to say, for our picky eating masterclass and for the theme of this really that's coming forward for me, it's about hunkering into ourselves as a family unit, as your family unit, really defining what your food values are and supporting your child through the changes that are going to happen as you introduce more foods for them. Because this is something that is laying a foundation for their health going forward, for themselves as teenagers, for themselves as young adults, for themselves in middle school, right? And so what we can do now as they're, in that toddler phase or young child phase, it is 100% going to be easier now, no matter how hard it seems that it might be. And it's going to impact them for the future. So the main idea and sort of teaching that I'm bringing to you all today is that it's so much about unifying your family through food. Our children are our mirrors. So whatever we can do to work on ourselves, our own gut health, and our own boundaries around food, that is going to ultimately really help and support your child. And it can be really fun, right? Like, this is a journey and a commitment to yourself, to your health, to the earth. And I hope that comes through our teaching today. I have this baby next to me, and so I might need to pick her up for a minute or something like that. We're gonna just take the class slow and steady, and I'll teach for about 45 minutes, and then I'll answer any questions that you have. And just so you're aware, when I do these live classes, they are the kickoff events for courses. So I'm going to be teaching a 4-week live class on picky eating and gut health for toddlers and children. So the class starts next week, and I will tell you more about the details of that. It's probably going to be the only live offering that I have in 2024. I will teach like a free masterclass again, I think in November. But other than that, this is going to be the live offering for the rest of the year. So without further ado, let's get started. And feel free, if you want to turn on your computer, your camera, you can, but also if you need to keep it off, I totally get that too. So what we're going to talk about today, how to better bring your family together around food, tips to increase the amount of nutrient-dense foods your child eats consistently. We're going to talk about how to introduce more nutrient density to the whole family, and we're going to talk about foundational gut health principles for toddlers. So I'm saying age 15 months to 5 years old. I think there's some leeway in there. If you have worked with me either in Mama Baby Biome or Baby Biome First Foods, then we're doing the prevention work here of setting our children up to not be picky eaters. But this can be something that you have a relationship to or work with for several years, and there's no judgment or bad thing about that. This is a journey, like all healing or holistic health journeys. It's really just about making small changes every single day. And I do have my outline here that I'm going to be referencing just so I don't forget certain things that I want to say. So I began this work healing my body, preparing my body to have a baby. And I had a son in 2022, and that was a birth by cesarean, which really shifted my perspective. That cesarean birth impacted my microbiome and my son's microbiome. And so I started to talk about microbiome and gut health in relationship to birth and in relationship to starting solids for our babies. How do we help them transition to real nutrient-dense foods that's going to supercharge their immune system and brain health? And that is really the meat and potatoes, so to speak, or the meat and squash, if we're talking gaps, of what I teach. I have a body-based approach, so I always look at physiology first. Really, the main perspective that I see on picky eating out there is that it's emotional problem, a behavioral problem, or that you need to just cut your kid's pancake in a different shape, and that's going to change the picky eating, which I think is funny because if I were to cut Augie's pancakes in one shape and he would maybe do that for one day and then the next day he could refuse that shape because that's how toddlers are. So what we're really going to talk about here is how changing the microbiome actually influences our taste buds and changes what our children want and desire to eat. That is really the crux and the key. We have to shift the physiology if we really want to shift picky eating. So I have a body-based approach. We're always coming back to the body. And I have a nervous system approach, like I was speaking about with my postpartum period. It's really important to take care of our nervous systems through this work. The foods that I teach nourish the nervous system. So our nervous system is a very hungry organ. We need to feed it lots of animal proteins and fats. And in that, we are going to build resilience in our system. But the other piece of this nervous system approach is that we don't go too hard and too fast for a change, right? We want to take a change on so that it's small steps every single day for big changes over time, rather than trying to shift your whole life around something new and you do it for 4 weeks and then you drop it. What I'm really interested in is helping moms integrate these real food principles into their everyday lives so that families can thrive and that children can have these beautiful symptom-free lives. And it's really, really possible. It's so possible for our kids to not have chronic runny noses, to not be picky eaters, to not constantly need antibiotics, to love to play outside, right? Like all of this is so possible for their healthy lives. And then if we're trying to, if something does come up, we're equipped with tools to first deal with it at home and then know how to transition if we need to get outside help. All of that is really important for what I teach. Okay, so I view food as a unifier for families. I think that food brings people together, it builds community, and it's a really great way to gather with your family. And I think that that should happen at least once a day and multiple times per day. It's quite literally our survival, right? So without food, we cannot survive. It's in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's in the bottom layer, right? We really have to focus on these physiological needs like sleep, time with nature, and food kind of equally in our family if we're going to have a lot of balance and harmony. And really, like only in the past, I don't know, 75 years, 100 years, has food become more of a divider. If you think about it, like people are eating on the go, people are eating a lot of fast food, kids are demanding other types of foods, right? And we have accommodated that as a culture. We say, oh, here's the kid menu. Oh, the kids have these different foods. Or the child is having some sort of a meltdown and there's just too many layers of stress and lacking that structural support to help parents say, actually, no, I'm going to hold this line right here and you're not going to have any other choice. We're eating this as a family and this is what you're going to have. That takes a lot of courage and it can be scary because seeing our children crying or upset, that's suffering, right? And that is a hard thing to watch as a parent. But what we want to understand a few steps back from that is that you implementing the boundary around the food that your child needs to eat for their body and their health is actually helping them in the long run. And like we have come up against this with my son. He's 2 and 4 months. And it's just so funny how the age, now that he's 2, has started this beautiful emotional expression that really wasn't quite there before like it is now. So what I mean by that is he says no in a really strong way. He screams and has tantrums. He'll throw himself on the floor irrationally. No matter where we are in public or at home or in front of his grandparents, whatever, it happens. And this is something I feel like culturally, at least in the Western countries, we want to hide that away. We want to tell him to stop. We want to just like get that out as quick as possible. And what I'm here to say is that, wow, my toddler is really coming online with his emotional sense. He has a strong idea of what he wants. He can say no. And this is a completely normal and healthy expression that I want to honor. And at the same time, I'm the adult. Okay, so what I say goes in most cases, right? And it's that fine walk, that's the fine line we're walking together and that we will continue to walk through as our children age. So I view cooking and meal preparation as a parenting skill, and I want people to know how to make something really fast when the blood sugar is dropping and good quality food is needed. So for example, we were traveling yesterday, we got on a ferry, it was much longer than we thought. We had breakfast, we packed our lunch, so we were like fairly prepared, but the time dragged on. And everybody was really hungry and tired walking in the door. So what's the best thing I can do? I scrambled 12 eggs, 1 dozen eggs with a lot of butter. And I made that for my family. It's a hot food. We grated Parmesan cheese on it. That's like less than 5 minutes and we're instantly fed. Okay, so we need to eat more than just those eggs. But knowing that I was going to make that and everyone was going to be able to eat and get to like a better baseline, then I could make a roasted chicken, I could make a salad, and that would come later, right? So you might be thinking, well, yeah, that'd be super nice, but my kid doesn't eat eggs. We're going to get to that, or your kid has an egg allergy. We'll also get to that. But just generally thinking like, what's that one thing that you can make in less than 10 minutes that will immediately meet that hangry need, right? Because our kids will sometimes be crying and tantruming because their blood sugar is low. And that has to do with the body's safety mechanisms, right? Our blood sugar drops when we don't have enough energy and it's shooting out glucose to the cells to try to give us that energy. So we want to meet that need with fat and protein. Protein and fat, that's macronutrients that should be on your plate every single day. And another example, like if your family can't do eggs for some reason, ground beef would be the next thing that I would go to. Like ground beef, we eat so much grass-fed and finished ground beef. It is just hilarious. And I have been on full GAPS, which I'll tell you all what GAPS is in a minute. I've been on full GAPS since I've been breastfeeding my daughter. And I just totally increased the amount of protein and fat that I've been eating, and I've been feeling so good. And a way to do that affordably is ground beef and ground pork. Both of those are 100% staples. I eat them every single day and I love them. And this is about like in the moment of need, what can we get in our mouths right away so that we stabilize, feel good, and then we can expand on what else we're eating. So this is a parenting skill, right? You coming in, you're like, everybody is tired and hungry. What do we need? Rather than swinging through the drive-through, what are those foods that you can have on hand that your family can just gobble up really fast? Everybody feels better. Okay, and then we can dig in and eat some more food. So for that meal yesterday, we had the scrambled eggs. I sliced up some tomatoes. We swung by the grocery store on the way home, grabbed those things, and then I made a roasted chicken with onions and dates, and we had a salad and we had more cheese. So we just like kept eating as the night went on, and then we all went to bed at 8:30. You need these skills as parents to help manage so much of your family's life. And it can sometimes feel like the easier way out is like, oh, let me outsource this skill so that I have more time to do this. Maybe you need more time to make money, or you need more time to do your own hobby so that you feel like yourself as a woman and a mom, or just simply your life feels extremely busy. And it's like, how do I cook more when I'm already at max capacity? And the answer to that is just to learn some foods that are going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. So that would be things like meat stock, and like I mentioned, ground beef and roasting whole chickens. Like get into the habit of making those foods constantly, and minimize the amount of time that you're spending on cooking by just doing things like, okay, I know my meat stock is going to simmer for several hours, but the actual prep takes me 15 minutes, right? And that requires that I pull out the frozen bones from the freezer. So I'm going to do that the night before. I'm going to chop any veggies that I want, throw them in the pot. Right when I get up in the morning, I'm going to turn my meat stock on. And that's how my family's going to have meat stock for the day, because it really total took 15 minutes. And I was able to prioritize that and have more delicious food for my family. When we know how to properly nourish our family, we are getting sick less, and we are able to use those foods to manage or support any sicknesses that come up, which is so empowering and so amazing. I hosted this awesome woman, her name's Holly, and she did a parent-led symptom management masterclass. And she was talking about like she's food before, during, and after, and me too. Like that's just such a good way of putting it. So if something is awry in your family and you're having a stressful time, okay, how can we centralize food in this picture and just get our bellies nourished and feeling good? Same thing if you're going through something like a head injury. Obviously, you might have to go see someone, check out the seriousness of this concussion, but what can you give that kid before, during, and after to help him feel really good in his body so that he can start that healing process that his body knows how to do? That's another one of my core principles. The body will heal. We just need to set up the environment for that healing to happen and watch miracles just come on through. It's really, really beautiful and special. So, talking a little bit more about bringing your family together more around food, that's gonna take consistency, and it's gonna we're gonna combat busyness with the actual preparation of food itself. We're gonna slow down with food preparation. So we want to involve our children in meal prep, something like soups. Making soups is alchemy, right? So we can alchemize any sort of intention that we have. We can alchemize courage, we can alchemize bravery, we can alchemize peace into our soup. We're going to chop with our children. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it's going to make a really nourishing meal. So I always love to help families. We're going to move into fall here soon enough. Fall is a great time for soup, but really it's an all year round food. It's affordable, and it is a great foundation for cooking. You know, think about it, the colors that we're laying out with the vegetables, the chopping. I have some favorite kid tools that I can share for chopping, and they get to throw it in the pot, and then you get to watch it cook, and they can put their intentions into it, and you can put your intentions into it, and you can stir the pot, and you can smell the pot as it's cooking, and then they get to taste it. This is a really simple way of involving children more in food. The younger you start, the better, and the more multifaceted results you'll get from cooking that soup. We also want to eat seasonally. So we want to start relying on garden or farmers market food. We're going to ground ourselves in seasonal eating, because we are not just eating seasonally because it sounds like a good thing to do. We're actually eating seasonally because the rhythms of the plants that are grown around you mirror your own biological rhythms and clocks. And what that does is it comes together and turns this light on for your hormones. So in terms of hormones, appetite, digestion, we want that to be parallel to the things that are growing around us to optimize that system in our body to get more nutrients and have more bioavailability. That is a really cool thing. The other part about seasonal eating is that it gets you into your community. It gets you to your farmer's market. It gets you talking to people who are growing your food, or you're doing it yourself in your own backyard with your children. They're touching the dirt. Not only does that support their microbiome health, getting the sunshine every single day, but it also informs them on where their food comes from, which kids really do care about, actually. You know, they're curious. That toddler age is they want to help, they want to be a part of the system, they want to be what the adults are doing, and all we have to do is give them an opportunity and allow for that to happen. And that's going to engage them more, turn on their digestion, match up, sync up hormones, circadian rhythms, and allow them to ingest their food better. I talked a little bit about consistency, and I talked about how we want to have our children gathered around the table once a day, at least. And I think that I stand by that. And I want to say that we want to look at consistency and our goals in terms of, okay, in 1 year or 6 months, where do I want to be with my family? And then what would be the halfway point of that or the quarter of the way point of that? And that's where we're going to start. So maybe you don't start with the goal of eating around the table every single day. You start with it having 2 or 3 nights a week, and that's very dependent on the family structure that you already have. But whatever that longer term goal looks like for you, and you can be really imaginative there, you can dream big for your long term goals. How do we cut it into a half or a quarter and then set up the structure to start with that, right? Like that's how we really become consistent. We don't bite off more than we can chew and try to do it all. We really look at what the long-term goal is with your family and then go to a smaller point and start there. So before we get into talking about toddler gut health, I'd love to hear from you all anything that has come up in the lecture so far, any questions that you have or experiences with some of the things I mentioned, and we'll flush it out a little bit deeper. Okay. I feel like I did really well with this while my toddler was under 2. Now that she's 3, I resorted to more chicken nuggets and fish sticks with veggies type meals. I want to get her back to what we're eating. Perfect. How do we know how much to give our toddler? Portions for them since we aren't following the My Plate guidelines. Yes. Okay. So I'll start with Steph's question. It's like just how you gradually started offering more alternatives for her, we're going to gradually pull that back. So she has been getting used to chicken nuggets and fish sticks. One thing you can do is you can home make your chicken nuggets and home make your fish sticks. I don't know if you're already doing that, but that's a great way. She can make them with you. And then in that case, like I don't super mind if my child's eating an alternative solution, or maybe like the whole family eats those really yummy homemade chicken nuggets, right? Or the whole family is eating the fish cakes, and that's how you guys are all integrating together. And then the next day, we try something else. Like everybody had chicken nuggets yesterday, and now everybody's having something else. So that would be a really one example of how to layer portions. So I just let my toddler eat as much nutrient dense foods as he wants. And this is how I think it really should be for toddlers. I think that there should be some like on-demand feeding, basically letting them graze as they want to, still having 3 meals a day, but also letting them come back to their plate. So for example, we have a big breakfast every single day. It usually involves at least 3 eggs for my 2-year-old and at least 2 types of like 2 kinds of meat. So, or 2 servings of meat, like sausage or bacon. And sometimes he'll like sit and be super focused and like gobble it all up, especially if we're all there together. But other times, I'm taking care of our second child. I'm prepping more food for the day. I'm working. His dad's maybe, starting chores or working outside or working on the business. And usually in that case, Augie will graze, and it will take him maybe like an hour to eat. And we just like let him graze and let him flow with that. And then we go to his activities, whether that's with us or babysitter. And then he has another structured meal with an offering of like a kefir, which is a nutrient dense beverage that's always like filled in his water bottle. So in terms of portions, like I think let them go to the upper limit with anything meat, eggs, or proper dairy, all those, and vegetables. And then if you're noticing something like, oh, my kid wants to eat unlimited fruit, but doesn't ever eat meat, then that's where we need a shift, because fruit is not going to provide your baby or your toddler with the energy that they need to do all their things throughout the day and feel really good. Cool. Meat stock. Yes, we'll tell you more about meat stock. Cooking tools, can tell you about that. Oh, my daughter loves having long meals around the table. It's such good bonding time. Yes, it's so beautiful. And like, it's just so fun and sweet to watch them eat and nourish themselves. And then like what conversations come up around the table. It's so great. I can totally agree on the idea of setting yourself up for success as you talk about prepping the meat stock. So epic to bring a bag from the freezer, thaw the meat, and get it slow cooking in the morning. Yes. Love to learn more about chopping tools. Yeah, so I can definitely share some of my lists of my favorite tools. Totally sharing long-term goals. Okay, great. So there's a lot of questions here and I will get to all of them. I'm going to move on to the physiology question about the course about in the class, because that's going to answer about meat stock. That's going to answer about the sugar questions that we have here. So we'll keep going and I'll get back to these questions. All right. So yay, foundational gut health principles for toddlers. And this actually applies to mothers, fathers, and babies too. So let's get into it. We have this amazing body and we have a digestive system that has two openings. It's a long tube from the mouth to the anus, okay? And we have a very beautiful natural process of digestion that starts in the brain. So what do I mean by that? I mean that our nervous system has to be in a parasympathetic rest and digest state in order for a lot of the digestive cascade to happen. So what does that mean? What I mean by digestive cascade? It's kind of like dominoes falling with our digestive cascade. It starts in our brain, then we go to our mouth where we chew our food and we have a chemical and a mechanical breakdown of food. So we're chewing, and this is what we're doing mechanically to break down food, but there's also a chemical breakdown happening, which is enzymes being released. And here's a fun fact. The only chemical breakdown that happens for carbohydrates happens in our mouth. So if you are eating carbohydrate foods and you're spooning that rice in your mouth so fast that you're swallowing it, there's going to be no more chemical specific breakdown for carbohydrate food in the rest of the digestive cascade. It is so important to chew your food, and it is that much more important to chew things like bread, pasta, rice, carbohydrates, all of that. We have to chew and break down and mix those enzymes with the mechanical breakdown of food. Then we swallow. It goes into our esophagus and it lands in a large bowl of acid. And this bowl of acid, called stomach acid, which is feels like right by your heart, right? That's why it's called heartburn a lot of the times. This large bowl of acid is specifically important for breaking down proteins and fats. That bowl of acid helps us to break down animal proteins and fats. This is why humans are omnivorous. We are designed to eat meat, and the top of our digestive cascade has a place for us to digest animal proteins. After that, it goes into the small intestine, and there's a couple of whisperings of chemical digestion that happens from the gallbladder and the pancreas to release more enzymes. It goes into our small intestine first, and that's where it hits the microbes, and especially in the large intestine. This is where we have the largest placement of microbes in the body. But we actually have microbes all over our body, in our blood, on every single vital organ, on our skin. Microbes are everywhere, and humans have evolved to live synergistically with these microbes. We're not sterile at all. There are trillions of viruses, bacteria, pyrons, all these species that live inside of us, and we need this microbiome to be healthy. It's a part of our digestion. It helps the body to further digest nutrients. It helps us to assimilate those nutrients, which means, kind of organize them and send them off to cells so that they can be properly used. It protects us from invaders. It helps us to fight off toxicity. These microbes actually produce their own vitamins. So when you have a healthy gut flora, your gut flora can make B vitamins. It can make different enzymes to help us digest our food. It protects us from toxicity and outside invaders. And these microbes have a home and a place for our lives as humans. So all of this, like kills 99% of germs. That's a no-go. We don't want to kill 99% of germs because they're not all germs. We want our body to protect and to differentiate for itself what's good and what's bad, which means we have to have a strong microbiome. I had this nurse, or she worked in the hospital. I'm not exactly sure if she was a nurse, but she DM'd me and she was like, I'm having like the biggest epiphany right now because my son's having all these digestive problems. And I walked into every single room, squirted my hands with antibiotics, rubbed it on my skin, did my job in the room, and then walked back out and did it again. And I did that all day long for years. Do you think that this could have an impact on my son's microbiome? Absolutely. Absolutely, it has an impact. And she had already, connected the dots herself, so I didn't really have to explain it much. But when we are constantly focused on killing bacteria, we are actually killing bacteria. And what that's doing is erasing good beneficial microbes and allowing more space for pathogenic microbes to come and take hold in the digestive system. And I'll just let that sink in for a second, because we really want to change our perspective, right? We want to be in the dirt more. We want to get sun more. We want to stop lathering ourselves with chemically laden products that kill the microbiome of our skin. Humans have lived outdoors. We have been a traveling people. We interact with our animals and plants around us. My husband was a butcher, right? He is a butcher. He slaughters animals and he sees the microbial content. Well, he doesn't physically see it, but he touches it and he brings that home for our family. And there is an ancestral history for every single person on this call, with more access and touching of plants, animals, dirt, soil, traveling good beneficial microbes, right? So now here we are in this modern times, and we focus so much on killing the microbes, the germs, the bad stuff. We take antibiotics constantly for every sinus infection, cough, cold. I'm not anti antibiotics, but it better be saving your life, right? Use those in life-saving situations and use natural remedies in other situations, right? Okay, so we have a digestive cascade that we need our nervous system to be in a rest and digest state. We need to be relaxed and nourished before we eat. So a super simple way to do that is have a pre-meal ritual, whether that's like a prayer, or whether that's lighting a candle, or turning on 5 minutes of a song and dancing, or taking a couple of deep breaths, or looking at your partner in the eyes, looking at your children in the eyes. All of these things are going to help prepare your body to eat. It's really simple, and it's actually super important. Stopping eating on the go, like don't eat while driving. I'm very guilty of that one. I do it. And it's not the best for my digestive system, right? So we want to really have the place where we feel relaxed and good and safe before we start eating. Now, with a toddler, and toddler sitting at the table, that's just, to me, unrealistic every single time. And I don't think the hugest emphasis has to be on toddlers, need to sit and stay at the table. I think that toddlers should know that we go and sit at the table, but ultimately their attention span is really short, and we have not a huge stress. It doesn't super stress me out if Augie wants to leave the table. He can. I just want to make sure that he eats more. Now, if he hasn't eaten enough before he leaves the table, then I will say to Alex, or Alex will say to me, okay, let's really bring some attention to eating right now. We do this thing called shoveling. We'll help him eat. We'll put food in his mouth. We'll keep talking to him. We'll distract him a little bit more so that he can stay and finish his food. I think for, his nervous system isn't super dysregulated. He's a regulated child. And that's the goal for all of our children. And so, yeah, we just want to look, so super simple things we can think about for regulating a child's nervous system is, plenty of outside time, enough loving touch and loving affirmation, not too much screen time, right? If they are just glued to a screen right before dinner, we might want to have them shake it out a little bit, vocalize, sing a song, something like that, just to help them shift to, feeling their body. Tapping is a really great way to bring everybody's attention to the body. Just a simple tap. You can use tapping exercises to reprogram yourself. We're not exactly talking about that now, but hey, it won't hurt to say some positive affirmations and tap your body with your toddler. They'll think that's cool and funny. Okay, so Nervous system state is important for us to start that digestive cascade and be able to digest our foods. And then we have this whole thing about the microbiome. And we've talked a little bit about some ways that the microbiome gets degraded. We've talked about antibiotics. Agricultural chemicals are a huge one. So eating organic or taking care, if you are not eating organic, to try to get, top layers of pesticide residue off of your food. Fermenting the foods that you can't eat that you're not able to buy organic. Or a really great hack for this too is buying local, talking to your farmer who might not be certified organic, but is still using organic practices. They get to sell the food cheaper to you because they're not paying for an organic certification, and you're getting really high quality local food that's not sprayed at a lower price. So that's another really good way to do it. Again, you can reference the environmental working groups, Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, and just stay away from that Dirty Dozen list. The reason is because glyphosate-laden foods are an antifungal. It's an antibiotic. It's low dose, small dose of antibiotics with every bite you take. And for a picky eater, it's really essential that they have a healthy microbiome. That's going to make their picky eating disappear. So let's get into a little bit more about the picky eating cascade or the picky eating domino effect, right? So if your child is picky and they're eating more processed foods because of that, then that's going to impact their gut and digestive health. And if the gut and digestive health is impacted, that automatically impairs the immune system. Why? The immune system and the digestive system are intricately connected. So I put this little layer in my hands because that's how I think of it. The digestive system is there and the immune system is right on top. There's a gut wall and a gut lining where we have a large amount of microbes, and they play a role in our immune system health. And they also play a role in what is called leaky gut. So if we have a healthy microbiome, those microbes are going to live on a mucous membrane, which is going to help keep our gut lining intact. And essentially what that means is that when you eat foods, it stays inside your digestive tract. It doesn't leak into the bloodstream and flag the immune system and create inflammation, right? So our immune system, 80%, about so far as we know with the research that has been done, 80% of the immune system resides in the gut in specialized cells called Peyer's patches. And we need healthy guts for our immune system to be healthy. So if you have a picky eater and they are not properly digesting their food, and then that food that they're eating is degrading their microbiome and causing leaky gut, their immune system is going to have like a broken arm or two broken arms or a broken neck, and it can really cascade into all of these things like allergies and increased infections. And then what do you do if your kid is getting like these chronic infections or just like super vulnerable to sicknesses from the outside? You take them to the doctor. And what does the doctor do? The doctor says, how about some antibiotics, right? Like that's pretty much what you're going to get. And I know this not only because my own experiences in the medical system, but because I have hundreds of people who DM me and say like, hey, my doctor said this is incurable. My doctor said I have to do steroids. My doctor said I have to do this. My doctor recommended I put chlorine in the bath. Like just like things that I'm like, wow, okay, no, don't do that. No, it's not chlorine in the bath. Someone said bleach in the bath. Right? Let's use those pharmaceutical medications for life-saving circumstances. And I could argue that even, but like, let's just point that for antibiotics, life-saving circumstances. Yes, we want those antibiotics and need them in life-saving circumstances. And let's rely on building our body's immune system so that our immune system actually does its job in the rest of life, right? What do we need to do to improve the body's immune system? We need to reduce inflammation. We need to increase the nutrients that are going to rebuild the immune system or help the immune system. So I like to call that nutritional refeeding. And this is where that portion question comes into play, because when we are giving the body and fueling the body with nutrient-rich foods like meat stock and meat close to the bone and animal fats and animal proteins and fermented foods, we want to let the body decide how much the body needs to eat. So for example, Augie, we've had these travel days, he's been skipping naps. and he goes to bed at like 6 o'clock a couple days ago, really tired, wakes up 12 hours later, which is about the amount of time he likes to sleep. And he's like ravenously hungry. So we give him 3 eggs to start, wasn't enough. Okay, we give him these squash pancakes, which is just 2 ingredients, squash and eggs. He eats like at least, I don't know, 10 of them so that would probably be like equivalent to 3 more eggs plus the squash. So 3 eggs, 3 squash. Then he eats a carnivore bar, which is these bars that I've been recently eating that are 500 calories, tallow, and a half pound of beef, dehydrated down into like a little bar. He eats all of that. He eats yogurt and he eats, sipping on his kefir. So like, yeah, he skipped his dinner before. That was a bit more than usual, but still, I was like really surprised that he put back all that food. Augie has a really healthy microbiome. He's a very robust eater and a very healthy kid. And I was just like looking at the adults around us at that time thinking, none of these adults ate this much for breakfast. And then like 1 hour later, everyone's like flagging because they had oatmeal and they're feeling like sluggish. And and I'm like, let's use the toddler as the barometer, right? We really can and need to eat more food typically than what we're eating. And the clarity around that food is like, it's nothing that's going to harm the body. Like, we're not letting unlimited bag of chips be eaten right now. We're letting a body do what a body needs to do and just like chow food, which is really great. And he, for whatever reason, needed all that food for his recovery food, and he ate a normal lunch. And dinner is probably like his smallest meal of the day, unless for some reason he was kind of boycotting earlier in the day, or wanting fruit, which I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, typically like his biggest meal is breakfast, and we just like let him go for it. Like sometimes we make 10 eggs for the 3 of us, myself, my husband, and our 2-year-old, and like Augie eats more than his portion, and we have to make more so that the adults can eat. So I just really, in this case of, building the immune system, working and building a healthy microbiome, we want to let the body eat. We want to let the body heal, and your desires, your cues are going to be what teaches you that. And that's why I always like to teach like moms and families heal alongside children. To me, it doesn't make sense to try to get our toddler to eat all these new foods without changing the entire food culture of the family, right? Everybody kind of has to be on board. And if our children are mirroring us and we're all really excited and trying new foods and setting this new food paradigm for our family, there's going to be so much more cohesion and support for every adult that's working in this scenario and for the child. They're going to feel like there's reciprocal maintenance, right? They're going to feel that that's feeding into their parents, into their strong adult, into their stable adult, and that's just going to give right back to them. Okay, so I really view this as something that everybody does together and everybody benefits from. So we have more sicknesses if we are having a degraded digestion, degraded immune system. We have more sicknesses, more infections, more prescriptions, and then those, remedies or solutions that we get from the outside world further degrades our microbiome. So like a super simple example nowadays, if kids have constipation, they go to the doctor for that. They're going to get told like, oh, it's somewhat normal because it's very common. And then they're going to be given laxatives, but those laxatives aren't going to address the root cause. And the root cause is microbiome health, or possibly it's gallbladder health, or possibly it's usually constipation is gallbladder health, microbiome health, or what's my third one for constipation? I'm blanking a little bit right now, but the main idea here is that we really need to work on digestion. We need to work on the foods that are going in so that the poop going out is happening every single day. And that's absolutely possible. My son, when we transitioned from just he was kind of constipated as a exclusively breastfeeding baby, not pooping every day. I knew we had some microbiome work to do. I transitioned him to solids in the way that I teach, and it took us about 6 months or more to get those consistent poops. Let's see, so 6 months, around, I would say 14 months, he was consistently pooping twice a day, every day, and he still is now. So it's absolutely possible to work on constipation, improve constipation, not be constipated anymore. And that's just one example. And that's why I love working with food as the foundation, because, likely if you have a picky eater, that's not the only symptom. And if it is the only symptom, that's a really good sign, because that means we just have to tweak a couple things, get some more foods in, or just like prioritize, the most healing foods, and then not worry if they don't have a huge diversity of things that they eat, because that will come with time. But the more likely situation is that your picky eater has some sort of digestive issue, gas, maybe some skin issue, maybe some chronic infection issue, right? And that's because it all has a root in digestion and the microbiome. And when we can address this, we can help our children thrive in multiple categories. Okay, I'm going to check out the chat here. Oh yeah, so let me just say meat stock really quick. So meat stock, this is a really awesome food that you will integrate first thing for your family when you're working on gut health. It's not bone broth. It's similar to bone broth. It might appear to look like bone broth, but it's distinctly different. And the difference is that you always start with meat stock using a raw cut of meat. It's always a joint with meat attached to it. And a good way to think about this is your meat stock cuts are about 20% bone, 80% meat. And you cook it much shorter than bone broth. So every cut of meat from different animals is slightly different. For example, a cow is much bigger than a chicken. So you're going to cook that one for longer, but not like 24 hours. The most you would cook a bone broth or a meat stock for would be 8 hours. It's maybe 9, but you want to keep it a shorter cook time, which just allows the amino acids to melt and break down into a collagenous and gelatinous stock that you consume to heal and seal the gut lining. So rather than having the holes of leaky gut like we talked about, the meat stock is going to be the glue that closes it together. It's going to fuel the immune system, and this is going to be a key to changing your toddler's palate and your toddler's microbiome. What I like to say in the cases of picky eating is that we just start with like 1 drop, and a syringe works super, super well for that. So you can do a syringe, a stainless steel syringe to get it in the mouth, or you can just dip your finger in it and swipe it in their mouth. You can do that they can dip their own finger in it. There's lots of ways that we can work with meat stock and will work with meat stock. I'm going to talk all about that in the course that's coming up, just so that this can become your family staple in a way that you all get back on track. Okay. Instant Pot for broth. So I like to recommend a Dutch oven. There's actually quite a bit of information on this on my Instagram. If you scroll back a little bit, I think it was the end of May, we did a meat stock week, and I talk all about Instant Pots and what pot to use and meat stock versus bone broth. So definitely go and check that out. It's at the end of May. Okay, how do we move away from sugar for a 4.5-year-old? We need to change the microbiome. So this is crazy, but the microbes in our gut are capable of releasing opioid-like substances that go to the brain. So remember how we were talking about the nervous system and the digestive system, and they're layered on top of each other. And this is done through the gut-brain connection. So there is a pathway in which nutrients, information, cells, etc., travel from the gut to the brain. And you might have heard this as the gut-brain connection. You might have heard your gut as your second brain or your first brain. Well, there are 4 times as many signals sent from the gut to the brain as the brain to the gut. So we really do have a connected system here. And something that's really interesting is that, like, where they are literally physically connected is through our enteric nervous system, which is why we want to feed those and nourish our nervous system and take a nervous system approach to gut healing and really integrate the body, because these things are integrated. So we want to acknowledge that during our healing. And the enteric nervous system is how those microbes travel. But these microbes are super, super interesting, because something like yeast can off-gas over 100 different gases. And yeast imbalances in the body are related to our cravings. So anytime there is a degraded microbiome, yeast shows up. And if we look at this in nature, yeast are cleansers. Fungi is the first thing to show up in a wasteland, and the fungi starts eating away at toxins. So the same thing happens in our body. If we have a degraded microbiome, yeast shows up and yeast starts eating away at toxins. This is kind of creating your body's its own like balance, but the system is in decline, right? It's not as optimal as it can be, but your body is, and these microbes, they're like kind of hanging on and functioning the best they can. So that's why something like, okay, so we have this idea of yeast. We kind of are familiar with Candida. Candida is just one strain of yeast, by the way. It can be, there's hundreds of strains of yeast, and they can off-gas hundreds of different gases. So if there's yeast overgrowth in the microbiome, that yeast is capable of off-gassing chemical substances that go directly to your brain or to your child's brain, and it can make you weepy, it can make you clingy, it can make you have tantrums, constant tantrums, right? Like some toddler tantrums, normal, all the time, toddler tantruming, whining, complaining, or maybe you have that thing where you see your kid get like slap happy and drunk and they're running into walls and like they're laughing so hard. That's yeast. Okay, so how do we take care of the yeast? We don't do something like a Candida cleanse or really try to just take an anti-herbal, even a natural one, to like kill off all this yeast. No, we want to build up the body and support the body's natural process of letting go of toxins and letting go of these negative or like not. So the microbes have a place, right? Even the bad ones, but we don't want to just kill them off so fast that it causes like a shock to the body. So that's where meat stock comes in, because meat stock is going to kill off the yeast. It's going to cause die-off, which can be painful in some senses. What that means, what die-off is basically like an outburst of the symptoms that are already there, but looking worse. It can look like a flu-like symptom. And I go like fully in depth about this in my course, Mama Baby Biome. So if you really want to learn more about that, you can learn it there. But just know that sugar cravings are connected to yeast in the body. So the root of that is going to be killing those yeast using like meat stock animal foods and starving them. So not feeding them what they want, essentially, because they do die and they can leave the body, and the body can then restore its own balance. So keys there are meat stock and fermented foods, the brines, and the other key there is going really, really slow. Slowness is better. Slow is better for ourselves, for our babies, for our children. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Social impact. So some questions about school, the social impact. Okay. So I'm gonna finish up my lecture and then we'll go back to the questions. I think that was a pretty good covering of the microbiome and gut for an introduction for you all. Now, when it comes to increasing nutrient density, we want to change the palate. And how we do that is we start giving small amounts of fermented foods. And these fermented foods are really powerful. When we start on them, it's important to make them yourself. It's really easy to do. I can teach you. And then you just start with the liquid. So the liquid is going to be the juice that's kind of left over in the sauerkraut brine or the beet kvass or the fruit kvass. And these microbes are so bioavailable for our bodies. And when we ferment our own food, we're taking the vitamins and the minerals and the micronutrients that are in that food itself, and we're proliferating them. So we're making those nutrients more bioavailable for the body, and we're making the nutrients combined with microbes, so we're supporting the microbiome. And you just do a small amount of that. You can take a food they already like, you can just drop a little bit of that food into, or a little bit of that brine into a food that they already know and love, and there you have it. You're starting to introduce and change the microbiome in the palate of your child, which is, yes, giving them more nutrient dense foods and also supporting their body's innate ability to digest. This is where the firm and loving boundaries are going to come into play. I actually saw this when I was doing my research about what else is out there in terms of picky eating. I heard it called like starve it out method. And I think some people don't love that approach. But for me, it makes sense to really clarify between parent and child. You mean business. And so I'm all about it. If your family wants to gradually make changes, I'm going to teach you how to do that in the course. And then there might come a day where you are just really standing strong, that we are going to be eating a warm, savory food, and that is the only option. So that would maybe look like scrambled eggs with butter. That would look like meat stock, chicken soup, something savory, beef, anything like that. We're just not going towards the sugar, and it doesn't have to be mean or, it's not mean, it's loving, right? You're doing this because you love your child, and you are setting this clear boundary that this is what we're eating. This is what our body needs to heal, and there's no other option today, right? You do that, and the child might say, okay, I'm not going to eat right now. And you say, okay, I respect your decision to not eat. They're not going to die. They're just going to be hungry. And then they'll come around and they're going to eat that food, and that food's going to nourish their body, and it's going to create a cycle that we want to continue, which is that mom and dad cook the food, kid eats the food, and kid enjoys the food because that food is nourishing for their body. And we can just see that boycotting as the physiology talking more than anything else. It's the microbes that talk. It might not only be the microbes, but it's a big piece of the picture. So I just come back to that, remind myself. And the more that you orient towards this microbiome lens, the more you'll start to see like, oh, wow, okay, die-off reaction might be happening right now. Oh, okay, wow, that's the bugs talking. The other thing is, if you work to make this dinner, you sit down at the table. I'm gesturing here because that's my table. You sit down at the table, you start eating, and all of a sudden your kid says, oh, I'm not eating this. I don't like this. Just say, oh, okay, no, fine, no problem, honey. And just completely ignore it. Just start, eating the food yourself and, carrying on the conversation. Don't give a lot of energy to that. I'm not doing it. Let's not make this battle happen where we're pressing will against will. Okay, fine, no problem. I'll just keep eating, ha ha ha, talking, passing things, and just allow it to be normal, and know that that's just the start of the journey, and it's going to evolve and change, and every day will be slightly different, and it's just simply not that big of a deal. All right, so the last thing I'm going to say for this part of the lecture before we switch to the Q&A is we want to increase the number of foods that your child eats, right? Like picky eating for a lot of you is probably defined as won't eat mixed foods, or only will eat certain foods, refuses foods that the rest of the family is eating. And I just want to put a little note in there for variety and versus seasonality. So in my methodologies, what I teach, I don't care if my kid eats 100 foods before one. That's not a big deal to me. It doesn't even make sense in terms of development for children to me. What makes more sense is supporting their gut and digestion first and foremost, fueling their brain and their immune system with nutrient density. So nutrient density is basically the amount of nutrients per gram of food. That's all that it means. And I want those foods to be really bioavailable. And what that means is that your child's body can just use it up right away. So some examples of nutrient-dense bioavailable foods are animal proteins. If you are cooking grass-fed and finished beef for your child every day and they eat it, that is a huge win. That is something to celebrate, to pat yourself on the back for. Good job. If you are feeding your kid conventional beef from the grocery store every single day and they eat it, great job. You're making it yourself. Great. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that is a really healthy, healing food. In the course, we'll go over just understanding why pasture-raised meat has or I'll just tell you now, it's essentially more nutrient dense than a conventional beef because it's raised outside. It gets vitamin D, and it changes the profiles of the fats. When a cow eats grass, which is the species specific diet for a ruminant animal, grass, hay, etc., that cow doesn't get any illnesses because it's eating its proper diet, and the output of the meat is higher in antioxidants, it's higher in omega-3s. It has as much omega-3s as fish at that point, and versus a corn-fed beef is going to be eating corn and soy, which is not appropriate species specific diet, It's going to make that cow sick. It's going to make that cow more prone to having antibiotics. And then that cow's output is different nutritionally. So the fat ratios aren't the same. The antioxidants aren't there as much as they are in the grass-fed beef. But in no way am I saying that because you can't get or afford pasture-raised meats, should you be skipping out on beef, okay? Regardless, beef is extremely healthy for us. Great, good, okay, cleared that up. Now, when it comes to variety, like if you're thinking like, oh, my kid doesn't like artichokes, or my kid doesn't like broccoli, or my kid is refusing all the vegetables, but he eats a lot of meat, he eats a lot of eggs, and he eats a lot of dairy. Great. I wouldn't consider that a picky eater. I would say that keep working on that microbiome and gut health, and those vegetables are going to come. Our son, we started him like primarily on animal food diet when he started solids, plus my own fermented vegetables. We didn't even really emphasize or care about vegetables. Now, as a toddler, he can put back like a whole plate of broccoli and butter. So I just take that as like, wow, we just set up the digestive system to work properly, using those and prioritizing the nutrient dense foods and the microbiome building foods. And look what that translates to. His body knows and can self-select what vegetables he wants to eat. Hallelujah, that's amazing. So basically, when it comes to working with your picky eater, and particularly if you choose to work with me in my course and move forward, we are going to emphasize animal foods over plant foods. We're not going to say that plant foods are bad. They're not, they're great. But we're going to focus on getting the animal foods in your kid's body over plant foods. We're also going to focus on seasonality over variety. So I really don't care if your child, or I really don't care if a child doesn't like quinoa and doesn't like black rice and doesn't like chia seeds, because those aren't foods that really make or break nutrition, in my opinion. In my experience, the foods that our children need are animal foods, brain building and immune building foods that are bioavailable to the body. So when it comes to picky eating, transforming the microbiome, that's what we're going to focus on. That's what's most important. And it's like such a relief, because it's so natural for humans to eat meat that they actually really love it. And if your kid doesn't like meat, that is a telltale sign that we need to fix what's going on in their microbiome, the yeast overgrowth and imbalances in their system. Once we start to deal with that, the meat is going to become very, very favorable to them. And you will likely see this thing that turns on where they're like meat eating machines. And you're like, whoa, is this going to stay the same or stop or what? It will, like, after they get their first fill, because they've actually been really hungry all this time, it will wean a little bit, but their growing bodies require it. And so don't be surprised if I accidentally turn your little baby into a meat eating machine. Yep, and the other thing, just to kind of drive home here, is that our children are our mirrors. This is about unification of the family. This is about becoming closer to the earth. This is about really connecting to your local communities, to your family, and most of all, helping your little eater thrive and make small changes so that you really feel good. So my course is a 4-week live cooking and coaching course. So we are going to be breaking it down step by step, getting you through the beginning phases of transitioning your picky eater into eating more nutrient dense foods. And during this course, we will also support your child's body in healing from infections and that kind of thing. Just naturally, skin issues may start to go away, because what I share is rooted in the practices that heal the gut, the digestive system, the immune system, and behavioral and emotional health. All those things can start to change when we shift the microbiome and your body's ability to digest foods. So this will not be a GAPS course. It will be using GAPS principles, but I won't be teaching like full GAPS everything. If you want that, that's in the Mama Baby Biome. This is going to be about really getting our kids and our family to eat more things. Like I said, it's an opportunity to work with me live. There will absolutely be like coaching interactions. So you're going to be telling me your exact scenario and I'll be helping you through it. And it starts next week. So we're gonna work for 4 weeks, live classes on Sundays at this time. And then we have a really great bonus speaker who's going to speak to matters of the heart and emotional healing when it comes to using food as medicine. So I'm going to go now to the Q&A, and you can ask questions about the course. Oh, right. So I have a super early bird price. The price is $299 for 4 weeks, and it's $100 off for 24 hours after this class. So I won't offer that price again. It will be on sale for the week, but it will be $50 off. It won't be $100 off. So if you're thinking about joining, you have like 36 hours. It'll be Sunday at midnight that will close the super early bird. And that will give you the 4 live lectures, which will be recorded and put into a module, a new recipe for each week, the opportunity to work with me, the coaching, a Facebook group that's going to be open for a week before the course, during the course, and 1 week after, and then it will be archived. So that means you won't be able to post new stuff, but you'll still be able to look at it. And those are really great because you can share wins, you can share your food photos, you can ask more questions, and it's just a way for us to stay in touch during the class. One more note on the Facebook group: if you don't have Facebook, a lot of times what my people do is they just make a Facebook and only get on it for the group. So your profile doesn't have to be even your picture, like nobody has to know you made a Facebook. You can just get on and use it for the group. And I think that works really, really well. And then if you do have a Facebook, that's great too, because you'll just jump in the group. So yeah, I'm going to go to the questions now. And if you have questions about the course specifically, put that in, and I'm going to bust through some of these. Okay. So I totally agree on the idea of setting yourself up for success as you're preparing. Oh yeah, we talked about that one. Long-term goal. Love this. So Jessie's just sharing her long-term goal, not getting any food from the grocery store. Cool. That's a good goal. Next small goal is to get all of my produce at the farmer's market. Love it. Hopefully shorter term goal, trying to get my toddler to eat more animal meats. Yes. So a great way to start to get your toddler to eat more animal meats is just to do the small amount of meat stock multiple times a day. And like, don't even make it like, one way to approach it is just to like drop it in your own mouth with the dropper and be like, hey, do you want to try this? And then just let it be one drop. That was great. And then move on, and then maybe he'll toddle back and say like, oh, I'd like to have some more of that, or ask for more right in the moment. He doesn't have to, or he can. And then a couple hours later, do it again, and then do it again. And then maybe the next day you don't do it at all. But then 2 days later, you bring out that dropper of meat stock again. And in the meantime, you've been having a couple cups of it because you're like, whoa, this feels so good. And that's how the patterns get built and get started. And that's going to change the microbiome of the mouth and start to change the gut. I know you're thinking like, how can one drop make a difference? It does. There are some people who are so sensitive, they have to start with one drop and they can't do more, right? So this is powerful medicine. It does change things. Tough question. My toddler goes to a Jewish school and they don't allow meat. Best case alternatives in your opinion? Currently I do cheese, nuts, sometimes Greek yogurt. Any other nutrient dense ideas? Yeah, so I would say that make sure your child gets meat before school and after school. And I like those things that you're sending. Cheese, I would do properly prepared nuts, so they're more bioavailable and less anti-nutrients. I would do properly prepared yogurt. I would do kefir. I would do avocado. I wonder if you could do like gelatin gummies, which is like a meat byproduct. I think what you have so far is good. I would probably do like broccoli with like loads of butter or coconut oil if they would eat that, and maybe like sprinkle some desiccated liver on there. I would do that. Yeah. Okay, this is a big topic. This next question, Julie says, so for the social impact has been challenging. We eat well at home, packed healthy snacks, but a lot of other kids do not. And of course, our little one wants anything in a package that can be found. Yes, and then Alina says, same here. It's getting better. It's getting better. Yeah, it is getting better. This is a really tough scenario, and I'm not quite at that phase yet, but the main thing that I would keep emphasizing for your children, which we are definitely going to cover this in the class, we're going to have some songs to sing, in terms of food and food education, but this is really a place where you empower your child to know their own body and know that like that's not actually really food. You kind of explain it to them like there's a lot of things in that package that aren't making their tummies feel good at all, and mommy is protecting you. And I know it feels weird because everyone's doing it. We look around and everyone's eating these foods, but our family does it differently, and the reason is because it's for our health. And if you think back to your great 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 grandmother, they didn't have any packaged foods and they were really healthy and they felt really good and strong in their bodies. And that's actually what allowed you to be here today. That's how you are such a strong and healthy baby, is because of the genes and epigenetics and all the way back to your great great grandmother. So explaining that to them, and even if they don't cognitively understand and take in all of that, it's like these are the things we just want to keep imbuing them with, right? Like these real truths, these real things that they want to know about and need to know about to be empowered in their body. So and then the other part is like you're doing the work of like building that healthy microbiome and those gut building foods, so that they are resilient out in the world, because Augie, he is starting to really realize and see that there's other things. And my mom made these cakes, and she had these cakes cooling on the counter on the table, and Augie could reach them, and he like reached for it and he took a big hunk out of the cake, and there was no icing, it was just regular cake. And he's like, I didn't see him do it, but I saw the bit missing from the cake. And I was like, oh wow, okay, so Augie has cake right now. I wonder if he tried it. And like it was a homemade cake, but not organic, like just regular bleached flour and sugar and everything. So I like went into the other room and I found him and I was like, hey buddy, what do you have? And he's like, no, he's like hiding it from me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he says to me, squash, squash. So the only thing he'd had even close to cake was squash, and we baked it like this souffle for him, and it looks kind of like a cake, but it's not. And so I just told him, I was like, oh buddy, that's not squash, that's actually something else that Lolly made, it's cake. And he didn't want to give it to me, and I was like, well, I'm not about to have that battle of wills, because I really don't want to put this negative connotation on him. I really don't want to like do this whole thing of like cake is bad, and I'm certainly not going to storm up to my mom and be like, you shouldn't have left those cakes there, and blah 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 blah. Maybe 10 years ago I would have done that. Anyway, so then he's like gripping this cake for like a lot of time, and he's sitting down with his toys and he's playing, and he's like da 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 da. He like lets the cake go, but it's right by his body, and I can tell he doesn't want me to take it from him. And so I'm like, okay. Then he picks it up again and there's one little crumb left. And so I pick up the one little crumb and I say, look what I have. And I just take it and I go and I put it in the trash, and I just let him, then I just walk away. And I was like, okay, let's see what that does. And about 5 minutes later, he looks at it, he gets up and he walks it to the trash. So obviously, depending on a lot of different factors, that's not going to be your exact scenario or the exact way that you handle it, or like it's different for a 5-year-old, it's different for a 7-year-old. But in that case, the principles that I was really trying to convey to him is like, this isn't food. This is not food that we eat. And it's not a big deal that you have it. Like, it's okay, even if you put it in his mouth, because his palate is so protected, I'll say, that I think if he tried a blue Skittle or something, he'd be like, what? And I've heard this and have seen this in older children. They basically, when the microbiome is healthy, we can recognize overly sweet or fake sweetened things as poison. So that's how I would go about it for a younger child, that example that I just shared. And then for the older children, it's just educating them, building resilience in their system, protecting their body as much as possible, as much as you already are doing. Is it possible to have a child who doesn't crave the processed sugary foods? We do so well, then go to a party or beach and ice cream wins the day. Well, yeah, so it sounds like that your child, oh, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. It is possible. I mean, like they know that the ice cream is an option because they've had it, And I'm not saying that ice cream is bad. I'm not saying that Augie's never going to have ice cream from the store, or from, not homemade ice cream. But yeah, course, like they have that pattern and that understanding that like we're having a special day, we're going to a birthday party, we're gonna get cake. Like you as the adult have that expectation too, right? But as a young person, as a baby, like Augie doesn't even know. Like with that cake, like he literally didn't put it in his mouth. I'm like pretty sure 99%. He held it in his hand. He thought it was squash. My kid eats the best freaking my kid eat the best with the friggin' screen as it claims him occasionally eats a lot with Grandma. I'm not sure, Josephine. I might be missing that question. But really, it's really from Ashley. It's really helpful that breakfast tends to be the biggest meal, then tapers for dinner. Our 3.5-year-old eats breakfast, bacon, eggs, gluten-free toast, then picks at dinner, or randomly do also. Yeah, totally. I eat a reintroduced AIP diet and always have my 4 almost 5-year-old still picky. He won't eat much veg. He will try some, but he says he does not like it. Elisa. Okay, so in that case, I would say like first of all, autoimmune protocol, paleo diet. Are you having meat stock? Meat stock is a really big game changer, and it's definitely autoimmune paleo, but it's emphasized more so on the GAPS diet, which is the protocol that I teach, and that's an acronym that stands for Gut and Psychology Center. So I would go for meat stock and start to work on meat stock. Speaking of reducing inflammation, why is there so much talk about milk increases inflammation and why we should be dairy free? I thought that raw milk is a healing food. Yeah, good question. So why is there so much talk about milk causing inflammation? Because we live in an anti-meat world, and it's an anti-meat agenda. Milk falls in that category. Milk that's highly pasteurized and on corn-fed cows is a dead food. It's not a healthy food. Raw milk is a healthy and healing food. It's very, very good for us. Now, raw milk I would consider like an advanced food. So all foods are dependent on the state of the microbiome. Raw milk, for example, has lactose. Lactose is milk sugar, and that can feed imbalances in the microbiome. So the place to start with milk products is properly fermented yogurt and kefir. But before that, we want to go to ghee and make sure we can do ghee. We want to do butter. Then we'll go to whey for yogurt and kefir. My son has loose stools every day and he barely eats almost every day. Okay, Sharon, so meat stock is going to be the place to start, and you're going to want to help his digestive system with the gentle plain meat stock every day, starting with the drops, just like I've been describing. Violet says, not directly about picky eating, but I think it's let's see, I think it is affecting her willingness to eat some foods, and I'm wondering if it will get worse. We've been on GAPS for 8 months. 2 months ago, my 18-month-old started scratching her butt. I don't know if it's parasites, not sure what to do. We don't go to the doctor. So I would just say that's yeast. And if you can take a little bit of the kefir and put that around her butt, the yeast is dying off and coming through the poop, and that's just pretty normal. So it will go away, but I would do a topical application of kefir. What's your goal amount of meat stock per day for a toddler age? 1 cup is super solid if you can get that in. With the meat stock, do we give the fat that comes with it for babies and toddlers? Absolutely. So fat is super important for babies, and we need to give our young children and our babies nutrient-dense animal fats. If starting GAPS and a 3-year-old is a fussy eater along with a bit of meat stock, what do you feed them? If all they eat is carbs? Yeah, so for that case, I wouldn't start on GAPS right away. I would just work on getting in meat stock and adding in more nutrient dense foods before you start taking things away. Once they're feeling more full with the nutrient dense foods, then you can cut back a little bit on the carbs. So for example, like if they're eating carbs, then I would get a nice piece of sourdough bread. I would fry it up in lard and make croutons, and I would float them in some chicken meat stock, and they have to scoop out the croutons and they sip the soup as they do it. What do I say about toys at the table? Well, I would say, are toys keeping the child from eating completely? Or is the child kind of playing with their toy, taking a bite, playing with their toy, taking a bite? Because in that case, I would say it's probably a really good thing. It's soothing their nervous system. It's helping them, kind of just tots around while they eat, I think it's typically totally fine. And if it's like becomes a thing where the toy is just, causing chaos or something, then take a break from it for about 3 days. Like toddlers, you don't have to take something like I find there's only like that 1 or 2 moments that are super, super hard for the takeaway. And then they move on so quickly. So I would say if it's causing chaos and it's preventing eating from happening altogether, make a rule around it initially. Don't make a huge, hard, big deal about it. Never toys again, just like, oh, we're not doing that today. Eat. 2 days, 3 days go by. If the toy ends up at the table, what happened? Did he eat and play with the toy this time? If it caused chaos again, needs to be removed. That's how I would do it. Okay, here we go. Wasn't feeding my son fruit when we started solids, and one day I found a family member giving him a ton of berries and banana. After that, he wanted it more and more and would throw a fit. Now I give him fruit, but keep it to a minimum, stick to mostly eggs, red meat, chicken, yogurt, and cheese. Great, sounds good. Got it under control. We had to put Augie on a full fruit ban, and it actually worked so well. We went on this long trip and there just would have been so much fruit and so much like eating fruit instead of other things. And in order to do that, I was like clearing all this emotional stuff, and my chiropractor did some work with me before we went, but I just said, fruit ban fully 100%, and it was really worth it. And then we got back home and we have a apple tree in our backyard and we have blackberries, and he could just go at it. He can have it. But when we were traveling and we needed him to stay full and eating the nutrient dense foods, we just told every adult, his grandparents, like, no, we're not doing fruit. And they respected it. Cured my daughter's thrush with meat stock. Heck yeah, Talia, that's awesome. Okay. Easier said than done with a 4-year-old. He will just scream for ages and be a really big fit and then won't go to bed. Yes, there's definitely going to be some moments like that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or lie or anything like that. It is absolutely for sure really real in these cases. And that's what we're going to be able to help you with in the course and go deeper with. My husband's a behavioral therapist, so he's going to be in on the action and helping, and with a lot of different modalities. And actually, he was working as a behavioral therapist, and what really ended that career was seeing the root cause of nutrition in a lot of these behavioral problems in children with autism, and really needing to go and study that further. So we went to nutritional therapy school, and now we're here working together with children and families and helping them thrive on a holistic level. Our pediatrician believes that a limited list of foods will impact him later on and lead to disordered eating. I do not agree with that at all, because, well, okay, so the limited list of food, are you talking about like GAP style foods that I talk about on my Instagram page? And if that's the case, those foods are going to be so supportive to his digestive system and his nervous system, brain health, immune system, that as he grows and the list gets bigger, he's going to be so happy to eat a bunch of different foods. And I just can't see how a healthy kid would turn into disordered eating from eating and prioritizing healthy foods. That just doesn't make sense. Like I told that story with Augie, I'm really aware and conscious, I don't want to put these bad, certain foods are bad and certain foods are good, but at the same time, I'm not going to lie to my kid and say that goldfish is food, because it's not. It's a denatured food-like substance, but it's not food. So that's where that differentiation comes. My son has severe eczema. We're told to avoid dairy and eggs. What do you suggest we do to replace that? You replace it with meat until the gut has been built enough in order to heal the food. Okay. I need help making eating conscious. My son, 5, while being conscious at the table, doesn't want to eat and thinks it tastes bad. If we let him blabber on for a while and move about it, we can feed him unconsciously and have eaten the food. Good, he ate it, but then Good, he ate it in the end, but come on, not great. Yeah, that's going to be a work in progress thing. I think we will definitely cover in the course. Some of the things you could do, if you're doing distracting eating him, first of all, definitely want to focus on the microbiome, the oral microbiome. So the meat stock and the fermented juice is going to be important. But then also just as you're feeding him and you're making the transition to more conscious eating, it would be food's yummy, not getting him to say it or anything, just starting to really feel that in yourself. And I would also turn into your own conscious eating habits. Look at that. For For the course, does it include cooking together like mom, baby, band? The course includes one cook along together. And the rest of them are gonna be like coaching style questions, and then each module has new recipes. Okay, I have a very opinionated, strong-willed, and independent 2-year-old girl. She would rather go to bed hungry and then wake up every 2 hours than eat what I'm making, following Weston Price. It's frustrating and heartbreaking. What would you advise? Yes, so we would need to know like what she does want to eat. And then I would say that we gotta just get in more broth and stock. And I think I could better answer that question if I knew exactly what she was eating, because then it would teach me about her cravings, and the cravings are messengers. The cravings tell us what's going on. So Weston A. Price style eating is awesome, but it's also pretty heavy on grains a lot of times, sourdough breads and stuff like that. And yeah, I just think that really kids don't need those grains right away. And I like to take them out, and I like to help kids build up with meats and proteins and fats. If like in the case where the cravings aren't driving it to be like only one thing, then it's fine. Because it's like, oh, the microbiome is not responding to that food and making it be like the only thing the kid eats. But if it's changed to the point where that kid's only wanting to eat bread, crackers, etc., cheese, then we gotta assess. Is the course useful if you want to start gaps for your eating? Yes, exactly. I explained it to my child. Okay, this is great. Kate is saying, I explained, she suggested a story. This is great. I explained to my child about how the sugar and carbs feed a monster in the belly, and sometimes the monster is really loud and demanding, and that when we're working together to not be, and we are working together to not feed the monster. So when she was whiny or demanding, I point out that the pasta monster was getting too bossy, so she could become more self-aware of which voice was driving the food choices. It stopped me having too much direct conflict with her at mealtimes. Beautiful. Love it. Course question. If the child eats pretty well, is the course still worthwhile? She eats meat stock, meat, eggs, she's not really a picky eater per se. I just want her to move further away from wanting ice cream if we're out, if that's even possible. There is a replay, yes. You want her to move away from not eating ice cream while we're out, if that's even possible. Yeah, absolutely. The course is definitely going to be worthwhile, because you're going to learn, you can learn how to make your own ice cream at home. You're going to be immersed in situations where, you're hearing other families talk about this kind of thing, and you're able to talk about it. You're able to I find that, if you have the wherewithal and there's even a little problem that you're wanting to solve, dedicating a small amount of time to it is going to supercharge the rest of your year. So that's how I look at these kinds of investments. I look at okay, where am I at? Where do I want to go? And what could happen if I dedicated 4 weeks to this? For me, it's usually yeah, if I immerse myself in this, even if I know certain things that the teacher's presenting, and I create a container where I'm actually going to implement and make changes weekly, that's totally worth it to me. Yes, we consume the fat. Okay, when you eat the fat layer on meat stock, you feel queasy. That is just a little sign that your gallbladder is a bit clogged up and it needs some help. Snack ideas. So I don't really do a ton of snack foods. Our snack foods are our meal foods. So if for example, Augie had chicken and yogurt for lunch today. If he wanted a snack when he came home, I'd probably just give him more chicken. So it's we just eat on the foods that are cooked for the day. I might scramble him some eggs. If he said no, I'd say kefir. We just have a short list of foods that are nutrient dense, gut builder foods. And if he says no to all of them, then he must not be hungry enough. That's kind of how we go for it. I was advised to use marshmallow root and licorice for leaky gut. Is meat stock a better option? I think that marshmallow root and licorice are going to be helpful herbs for the gut and for a lot of people, but also meat stock. I would do both. What I would suggest, coconut yogurt or raw milk yogurt made home? Raw milk yogurt. Similar to the parasite question, would an itchy scalp while gut healing also be yeast dying coming out? Yes, yeast, dandruff is yeast. Can we start giving kefir to a picky eater? Or should we start with meat stock first? How do we know when to start offering kefir? Yes, so kefir is extremely strong probiotic. It contains, I think it's like 60 different strains of beneficial yeast and bacteria if you're making it at home yourself. So I would start with meat stock first, and then you're gonna go to kefir slowly, like just one drop, and see how that goes. I have a 4-month-old and a 3-year-old. Are you starting with this course or baby biome? Okay, so Steph, baby biome is just food introduction. So I would definitely get that for your baby. And then the 3-year-old, if they're a picky eater, then this would be a great, it's a totally different, they're totally different, the courses. So baby biome first food plan is step-by-step food introduction for baby starting solids. And then the 3-year-old, if you wanted to work with the picky eating, it's gonna be this. Yes, so Ashley has been in Mama Baby Biome. She took it the first time I ever taught it, and she said, "Thank you, Kate. This reminds me we're doing well overall, but just need a few ideas to continue our journey. Seeing our daughter's regulated system is confirmation we're doing great." Exactly. That's wonderful. So happy for you. If anyone, oh, and her baby was a little bit of a picky eater when she started Mama Baby Biome, and she became a meat stock boss by the time she finished the course. And it was so cute. She drinks it from a straw. If anyone has a tried and true tested recipe for homemade kefir or yogurt, yep, someone answered that. My girl's cravings are red berries and homemade ice cream, bone broth based with fruits and a bit of honey. She could eat that all day. I'm trying to incorporate eggs, meat as much as I can, but she plays with it and moves on. Yeah, so I would just remove the bread for a while. Berries are great. Homemade ice cream sounds delicious. And just sort of start changing that. You got to just change it up. Like we're not having bone broth ice cream for a little bit. We're forgetting about that for a little bit, and we're going to work on having soups every day. And then once the soups are really strong and good, you can bring in that bone broth ice cream again. 9-year-old who mostly likes carbs and sugary things, need to heal his gut. How would I start? Yeah, you would you got to start by introducing meat stock with the foods that he's already eating. Start gradually changing it, or so gradually change. That's one option. We're going to go over all these options in the course. Or you got to do like a cold turkey method, which is like getting it all set up, preparing the whole family and the home environment, getting some foods ready, and just like this is your only option. What do I suggest to replace? Vacation travel. Okay, so people who are asking about the vacation travel meal plan, I'm going to be sending that out in my next email. Pastured hot dogs, a healthful food? Yes. What would you recommend to support your gallbladder? I teach about that in Mama Baby Biome, but your gallbladder needs like bitter herbs and things like that. Will this help with symptoms of ADHD? Yes, absolutely. This would be fantastic. You recommended a probiotic at Instagram. It's better to make meat kefir and meat stock from scratch, or cheat a little bit with the probiotic and collagen. Good question, Josephine. So always food first. Probiotic supplements are actually less strong than probiotic foods, and they offer different strains and varieties. So this can be a good thing to add in as well, but we really want to focus on the food as the foundation. And powdered collagens, I don't recommend. I recommend making meat stock. Occasionally, if you wanted to use some like high quality grass-fed gelatin to make a gummy or a marshmallow, that'd be fine as a treat. But that's not really going to be a gut healing. I mean, it is going to be gut healing, but it's not your foundation. Your foundation is the meat stock. There was one other question up here. So what do you suggest to replace tomato sauce? It's organic, but still. Does it have sugar in it? Because if it's just organic tomato sauce, I would say it's fine. I mean, I don't see really any problem with that. But I would, if we were like in the coaching scenario, I would like flush it out and like I would want to understand more about like why it is for you kind of a flag, because then that's going to help me understand, oh, is this something that's really does need to be addressed because it's related to something? Or is it just like she's just kind of thinking like we eat this a lot, so it must be something to have variety. I do have a recipe for a no tomato sauce, which is like a veggie based kind of tomato sauce. It tastes really good for people who can't do nightshades. What do you suggest for a lunchbox for daycare? So I would suggest for a lunchbox, meat, fermented food, fermented dairy, if you can do dairy. If not, replace that with avocado, some roasted vegetables with butter. Voila. That's like the variation of my son's lunch to go every single day, and he doesn't complain. He loves it. Does the course come with a weekly meal plan or a few recipes to rotate? Yeah, so when you buy the course, you can add on a recipe, picky toddler cookbook. Each week has a recipe, and we will work on meal plan building in the course as well. So you will leave the course being like, okay, I know how to meal prep and meal plan for my kid. I know what foods that he or she should be eating. I know how to heal the gut and what foods are gut healing. And I know, and I have made progress on the picky eating in my household. Like 100%, you will start the journey where you're at right now, and you will see definite progress by the end of the 4 weeks. You might even see like, you could see like a miraculous jump where it's like no longer a picky eater. More likely, you'll see a lot of really positive changes and have a bit of a ways to go as well in 4 weeks, just to be like super realistic and frank, because it takes time to heal these things. It's not something that should just like instantly disappear. And this isn't a band-aid fix. This is a foundational support structure for you as a mom to lean into someone who has an expertise around gut health, digestion, and picky eating. So that's really what you're going to get out of the course. You're going to get some community, you're going to get some wins, you're going to feel really good by the time the course is over with everything that you've learned about foods that heal. All right, everybody. So an hour and 45 minutes. Any more questions? Thank you. It was an amazing birth at home. Do we get to eat? Yes, you get to keep access to the course contents at the end. Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind, before we close, putting in your takeaway from today's class. I'll read those out loud as we close. You'll be getting an email from me with course details, your coupon code, which expires Sunday night.
Tomorrow night.
What's tomorrow? Oh, it's not Saturday, it's Sunday. So yeah, it expires Monday night. And that's $100 off. Not gonna offer that again. It will be $50 off for the week. If you need a little bit more time to decide about it, you'll get still opportunity for the sale. And yes, you can listen to this again. Yes, you'll get the recording for sure. One-on-one support, there will be an email coming out about that, but I'm not doing a lot of one-on-one because I just can't right now. Recommendation for GAPS cookbooks. The Heal Your Gut cookbook is good, and I have a cookbook in my mom and baby biome. Yeah, if a child has adverse reactions, we're going to cover that in the course. Yeah. So one thing that you are taking away from this live class, go ahead and put it in the chat. My 13-month-old is having digestive issues. She was constipated for a while. This week she's had diarrhea and hasn't been wanting to eat. Yeah, I think this course will be great for all of you. Yes, so Heather loved the idea of looking through the microbiome lens. Great. Hopefully that will help you make some informed decisions out there in the world, in a world that wants to kill our microbes. Steph says it's not too late to turn things around for my 3-year-old. Yes, it's not. That a little bit at a time makes a big difference in shifting the big picture. Exactly. Claudia says, I'm on the right path and the body is miraculous. Yes. Ruth says, I'm the parent, so I get to choose what we eat because I love my child. Yes. Wonderful. Thanks, Kate. I'm from Indonesia. It's 2 a.m. here. Yeah, you guys are dedicated. Thank you for being here live. Thank you so much for coming, and may you be blessed. May your family be well fed. May you be able to continue your journey in the way that works best for you. And I really hope you join me in the course because we're going to go deep. We're going to have a fun time. Like I said, this is gonna be the only live teaching that I have in 2024, and it's gonna be really, really good. Food cooking is a parenting skill, so vital. Where will the live be posted? Oh, great, perfect. All right, everybody. See you later. Have a good afternoon.